time management, was speaking to a group of business students. To drive home a point, he used an illustration that the students would never forget. As he stood in front of the group of high-powered overachievers, he said, "Okay, time for a quiz." Then he pulled out a 2-gallon wide-mouthed pickle jar and set it on the table in front of him. He poured in about a dozen fist-sized rocks and carefully placed them one at a time into the jar. When the jar was filled to the top and no more rocks would fit inside, he asked, "Is this jar full?" Everyone in the class answered yes. Then he said, "Really?" He reached under the table and pulled out a bucket of gravel. Then he dumped some gravel in and shook the jar, causing the pieces of gravel to work themselves down into the space between the big rocks. Then he asked the group once more, "Is the jar full?" By this time the class was on to him. "Probably not," one of them answered. "Good," he replied. He reached into the table and brought out a bucket of sand. He started dumping the sand into the jar and it went in all the spaces left between the rocks and the gravel. Once more he asked the question, "Is the jar full?" "No," the class shouted. Once again he said, "Good." Then he grabbed a pitcher of water and began to pour in it until the jar was filled to the brim. Then he looked at the class and said, "What's the point of this illustration?" One eager student raised his hand and said, "The point is, no matter how full your schedule is, if you try really hard, you can always fit some things into it." Now, sometimes we feel like that in our lives, don't we? "No," the speaker replied. "That's not the point. The truth of this illustration teaches us, if you don't put the big rocks in first, you'll never get them all in." What are the big rocks in your life? What are the big things in your life that's maybe taking all of your time? Maybe taking away your focus from what's really important. What should really be important? Family, friends. But at the top of the list, God. Above all, should be God. So this afternoon, when you're reflecting on this short story and when you're reflecting and thinking about Uncle Bill's life, ask yourself, what are the big rocks in my life? Then put those in your jar first. And then let God fill your life up to overflow. Today, as we celebrate the life of Bill Chancellor, remember these 3 things. Remember, review, and refocus. Let us pray.